Oh, sorry.
For today's cup of coffee,
Doing weirdness.
we're going to do a revisit.
Yeah.
And actually this weekend, we're going to do 2 revisits. And the reason being, the first one today is going to be Hippies, part of Covert Ops. And then the one tomorrow will be about Laurel Canyon.
Yeah.
And what spurred this was listening to someone today that thought that they knew what was going on in the 60s, even though they were born in 80-something. And maybe I think it was 80-something. The person at times acts like they're 12.
Yeah.
And so, I was born in 65. So I lived part of this.
He doesn't know shit about shit.
And so, we do have new people since this, since these were originally brewed. So it never hurts to revisit some of these. This was during the period of time I was doing a lot more research than I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And again, it's like I had to stop some of that because it was really affecting youngest kid in a negative way. And since he is co-host, it's a matter of trying to attend to his needs on that. But the 60s, they still have this weird glorification of that period of time because the media does what it does. And, that was one of the things, Operation Mockingbird. And that is in full force today. Yeah. Because somebody is writing the script, and it goes from the 4 major ones, it trickles down to the, your local stations, because they're all owned by the 4 major ones.
Yes.
So that's the reason. And I'm sure other people have seen where they'll take various and sundry news reports, and they literally have the same script.
People have made compilations, all of them at once on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah. YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels.
Yeah. So, it is a matter of conspiracy fact. And I actually thought that we did a video as far as Operation Paperclip. If we did, I couldn't find it.
Actually, anytime someone posted stuff like that on Instagram, that it would be removed because Instagram is now owned by Facebook.
Lovely. So Zuckerberg.
It was owned by... It was acquired by Facebook a few years ago. I don't know how many years ago. So.
It figures.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, a lot of us were bitching about that.
Yeah. Because they're trying to own everything to control the narrative. Mm-hmm. And don't think that the 60s were any different. They weren't. And so this video will explain as far as how the hippies
I just like the
came
groovy
to be.
Stuff. I just like the decor, like the wiggly, the wavy stuff.
And that's where you
like
get
the
into
lava lamp stuff.
That's where you get into some of the person that was discussing. It was Leary, Timothy Leary. I think it's Timothy. It's late in the day again.
Now, say who they were discussing.
I'm not trying to embarrass anybody or anything like that. It was Dunning-Kruger effect that if when somebody is ignorant of a subject and they keep talking, it just shows their ignorance. And so hopefully at some point, he'll never watch this anyhow.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those, it's okay to be ignorant of something, which means that you just don't know. But to remain ignorant is a choice. And it's okay to sit there and go, I don't know about that. Let me research that. Let me learn about that. And then I can give you an intelligent answer. Mm-hmm. So anybody who thinks that it was just big party time and stuff, no, it was not like that. There were changes that came out of the 60s that were necessary and very needed within our society. But it's what happened. I don't know. It's one of those that they'll give you a little bit of sweetness when there's a whole lot of poison behind it. So, yeah. So enjoy this revisit. Again, this one is Hippies, part of Covert Ops, because that's exactly what it was. For today's cup of coffee, we have something that's really interesting. It's interesting to me. And I could have gone into this.
I don't know what we're talking about, so I don't know
for
if it's
days.
interesting or not.
For days. And I will tell you that the author of this article is a bit of an asshole. He truly is. I don't even know why he bothered with it.
Then why use his source?
Because it actually was more comprehensive than some of the other ones. It was comprehensive, but not to where it was going to be like a 4 to 5 episode, thing.
Okay.
So it's a matter of just
Love it.
rewording it. I'm not going to use it verbatim anyhow.
Okay.
But some of these things, it's difficult. And especially on some of it, even when you go back, is it the Wayback Machine or whatever it is, you can't find shit.
Sometimes, yeah. Just because sometimes it just doesn't document certain web
It
pages.
seems to me like that there is another sort of that type of thing. Is it an archive engine? What is it? It's an archive something.
I have no idea.
That Styx, Hex, and Hammer uses. Because he goes to archive because he does not want to give clicks or views to any of these current people. And I understand that.
What's wrong with the Wayback Machine?
It's just not archiving a lot of this stuff. In some ways, it's become compromised.
Okay.
So that's not a good thing.
I think it's I think it's a source thing or whatever for other people to use, so
well,
it's a tool for other people to use to archive websites and such, but I don't think many people know how to do that or use it.
Well, that could be.
I don't know, I could be pulling that out of my ass, I don't know.
But now, as far as them wanting you to register and log in and do all this stuff with anything.
They've never asked me to register
They did.
and log in.
I was just there earlier, like an hour ago, and it certainly did.
Once again, they've never done that with me.
Coffee slurping in the background because it's cold. It's not as cold
And
as
yet
it was
she decided
yesterday.
to keep the air on 60-something. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Do you want fuel in like January and February? Then conserve now.
But I'm cold. Now.
Put on socks, long-handled underwear, fuzzy pajamas, just like the rest.
You see the garb that I'm in.
Well, anyhow, I have on thermal shirt. I have hoodie over that. I have these, fuzzy sheep. It's got some kind of sheep print, but it's got moon and stars, so that's what I liked it.
You want a cookie?
You want to smack in the head?
You want to smack back? You smack me, I'll smack you back.
This may be something that's admissible in court, and you all could be witnessing it. Anyhow, no Thanksgiving for you tomorrow.
She was the one that threatened to hit me first.
Who cooked the turkey?
Who vacuumed the floor?
Did you help create some of this?
Who helped you stir?
Who cooked the cranberries? Oh, you stirred the cranberries.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So, anyhow, and then I've got other things to prepare for tomorrow. Do you want deviled eggs tomorrow?
I do.
Be nice.
I can make them myself then.
Well, you can do that. You can go right on and you can do that.
It'll take me forever.
Well, we got a time frame on all this stuff. Anyhow, the author of this is Joseph L. Flatley. This was written on April the 14th, 2020 from a website that is called Please Kill Me.
Oh yes, get your sources from what.
And I'm like, what
that.
the hell is that? And it says, please kill me. This is what's cool. Well, find a different phrase. I hate that phrase. Anyhow, the name of the article is, Were We All Brainwashed by the CIA with Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll?
Were we?
And like I said, I'm not going to read verbatim. I will put the link in the description box, and you can read the snark. I have worked around the snark because some of these people that think they're so brilliant are not. Yeah. And he's very anti, if you want to call it conspiracy theory, which was a phrase that was made up, I do believe, by the CIA or something like that. It's a disinformation phrase. So, everything is backwards at this point in time. And so he writes, about how LSD and the hippies were invented by the CIA in the 1960s. I have heard that for many years. And he says, in his snarky way, which I'm going to edit, the idea was to hook kids on sex, drugs, and rock and roll so they would not overthrow the military-industrial complex. Accomplices in this scheme were supposedly the Beatles, Jim Morrison, Frank Zappa, and other residents of Laurel Canyon in L.A. And that is something about Laurel Canyon I was not familiar with, so I will have to go further in depth at that at some point.
Yeah.
And he says that Jim Morrison, Frank Zappa, Papa John Phillips, as the mamas and the papas.
He's about to fall.
And David Crosby were all children of high-ranking members of the American military.
Okay.
And that the Los Angeles neighborhood of Laurel Canyon, one time home to all of the above, was also the location of the Air Force's 1352 and photographic group.
Yeah.
So
someone just pulled up in our driveway and then backed out.
Oh, that's all right. They just probably needed some place to go. Maybe they smelled the cranberries. It drew them to us. And it, according to, instead of just saying researcher David McGowan, he has to go to the late, of course the man's dead, conspiracy researcher.
Okay.
Which automatically puts negative connotation on Mr. McGowan.
Yeah, I think he did that on purpose.
Sure he did. He says that they indicated a military psyop of mind-blowing proportions. McGowan, who died in 2015, laid out the theory on podcast through his website, Center for an Informed America, or CIA, which actually was pretty cool. And also in his book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, Laurel Canyon, Covert Ops, and the Dark Heart of the Hippie Dream. That's sort of hard to get there.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Well, it's late.
There's a little bit of a struggle. That's all good.
I struggle greatly.
Me too.
McGowan claims that the hippie movement of the 1960s was conceived in a government lab and as a way to diffuse the anti-war movement. The plan was to hook kids on rock music and hard drugs, taking their minds off revolution in the process. And says perhaps the individual most emblematic was Jim Morrison. And McGowan writes, quote, Morrison essentially arrived on the scene as a fully developed rock star, complete with a backing band, a stage persona, and an impressive collection of songs, enough in fact to fill the Doors' first few albums. How exactly Jim Morrison reinvented himself in such a radical manner remains something of a mystery. Jim Morrison's band arrived on the scene as a fully formed entity, end quote. And then there was another...
Wait, do they not understand, how, bands take breaks and then regroup and...
No, that's not what he's saying. It was sort of like...
that was
that they came out of nowhere is basically what he's saying.
Uh-huh.
Sort of like studio bands.
Right.
that...
Or industry plants.
Yes, that's exactly what he's alluding to.
Okay.
And where do these, studio plants come from?
I mean, they just find people and put them together sometimes.
Exactly. They've always done that. They have always done that. But why?
Some bands honestly do, just like they're formed, and like it takes them a minute, but when they finally get like recognition from a record label or whatever, and like sometimes they honestly do completely change up their whole style before
yes, but
putting out an album.
There is a history usually to those bands. Studio bands, not so much. They just all of a sudden they're there on the scene. They are highly promoted. And we have seen how vulnerable or gullible, whichever you want to say, the public is to whatever is, the perception of whatever is popular.
Did you know that J-Lo or Jennifer Lopez was an industry plant originally?
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, but now she's a legend.
Yeah, well...
She's an icon.
Give it 20, 30 years. Because will those people have that staying power, or will they just be, blips on the radar at a certain point?
It's been 20, 30 years by now, at this point, that she's been on the scene.
No. I'm talking after her passing.
Oh. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, Amy Winehouse is still an icon. People still...
She was talented.
Yeah. I mean, Jennifer Lopez, she's got some talent, too.
Anyhow,
I'm not a big fan of her.
We're going to get lost in music talk because we
could
can
talk
do
about
that
music all
easily.
Can we do a podcast about music? Just talk about our favorite type of music and such like that.
What has it got to do with spooky stuff? Cat is poking holes in my thigh.
Because we were just talking about music. And
well, we can. We could do some that are backgrounds with some eerie backgrounds, because a lot of them do have eerie backgrounds.
No, I just wanted to talk about music. That was it. No, nothing spooky, nothing. Just talk about music all day.
Well, we might could do that at some point. Anyhow, another one that this dude has labeled as a conspiracy author was John Coleman, and that he claims that he first found out how the world really works, and he was being facetious, while serving as an agent of Britain's Special Intelligence Service. After he got out, the story goes that he made it his life's mission to expose the cabal of Jesuit Freemasons, intelligence agencies, and other that secretly run the world on the behest of the Queen of England. Now, there's a lot of people that have that thought. I mean, so I don't think it was just John Coleman.
Yeah.
It says,
other people.
That a lot of this stuff... it's not verified. Well, it could be very easily verified whether or not this man was part of Britain's Special Intelligence Service.
How would you verify that?
Oh, you can tell when people worked in something.
I don't.
You can go back and get the records that they were part of that.
Okay, so you could just type in their name or whatever and find it.
They usually have to have some kind of an employment record somewhere, so he's saying that you have to go by Coleman's word. Well, what are we doing? We're going by dude's word. What's the difference? And Coleman writes in his book, The Conspirator's Hierarchy, quote, "The phenomenon of the Beatles was a carefully crafted plot to introduce by a conspiratorial body which could not be identified, a highly destructive and divisive element into a large population group targeted for change against its will," end quote. And according to Coleman, the Beatles were the vehicle that social engineers from a think tank called the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations used to manipulate American youth. He labeled this plan the Aquarian conspiracy, and I will have to go and look into that. And Coleman had stated, quote, nobody would have paid much attention to the motley crew from Liverpool, and the 12 atonal system of music that was to follow had it not been for an overabundance of press exposure. The 12 atonal system consisted of heavy repetitive sounds taken from the music of the cult of Dionysus and the Baal priesthood of Adorno, and given a modern flavor by this special friend of the Queen of England, and hence the Committee of 300. Tavistock and its Stanford Research Center created a distinct new breakaway, largely young population group, which was persuaded by social engineering and conditioning to believe that the Beatles really were their favorite group. All trigger words devised in the context of rock music were designed for mass control of the new targeted group, the youth of America, end quote. Well, now, we've already discussed as far as frequencies, the use of frequencies as mind control. Mm-hmm. So, knowing what we do today, does that give more credence to some of this? I think it does. I think it gives, it's like, maybe these people weren't so crazy at the time.
I don't know, because like they like mind control using the Beatles through their music or whatever. Okay, I've listened to the Beatles before, but they're not a band that I'm gonna be like, oh yes, I want to listen to some Beatles today. I'm gonna binge listen to Beatles. No, I can't do that.
But you got to realize, you've got to put it in the context of when this happened. And if you go back into the 60s, and I was going to wait till a little bit later in this to discuss this. If you go back early 60s, and you had like Beach Boys, and you had groups like the Beach Turtles, and the Zombies, and different people like that, and listen to the style of music that it was. And then when you had, it was called the British Invasion, and you had all those guys that came over here, everything changed. And people's like, well, it had to do with Vietnam. Yes, it did have to do with Vietnam. But where they're talking about when you did have this huge counterculture movement, and we're talking everything from Woodstock, which it did start a lot of the drug usage. It made it more popular. You had the hippie movement. What was it? Some other tune out, turn on, or whatever. You had a decrease of morality as far as sex, because that was something that became very casual. Then you had, I'm trying to remember if it was the 70s or whatever that it was Roe versus Wade, which made it very easy to get rid of the consequences of casual sex rather than being responsible. And the society did change. I'm not saying that there weren't elements that did need to change. It did. But as far as that kind of total break and rejection of traditional American values and morals, like I said, I was born in 65, so I wasn't right there in the middle of it. But remember quite a bit. Remember, as far as my parents talking about these things, my grandparents talking about these things. It was not that it was that prominent in this area because that we are sort of isolated. Mm-hmm. Even shows, that I watched like Laugh In and things as a child, and not really understanding that. And it's like, okay, that's different. That looks cool. And what was interesting, if you go back and watch some of those shows, when they filmed that, it was this close angle, this sort of hypnotic, the camera angles and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Even as far as the psychedelic colors and shapes and everything. And, combine that with LSD.
Yeah, combine that with any hallucinogenic.
Right. And that these people at that time were very much encouraged to partake in these things. LSD and stuff was not illegal at that point.
Yeah.
Let's remember that this was cooked up in a lab someplace. And as part of MK Ultra, was given to people without them knowing. Yeah, that is verified. So, going back to McGowan, he had said that besides the Doors, that there were a large number of groups and musicians that were also in on this, which included the Byrds, Frank Zappa, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, the group Love, Graham Parsons, Neil Young, Poco, and the group America.
Poco the clown, Pogo's distant cousin.
Pogo.
Yeah, Pogo's distant cousin, Poco.
Okay. And
yeah.
So, according to Dude, McGowan implies that the plot was thought up, completed, whatever, implemented by the military-industrial complex. So, yes, we have Cat over here and his little
his tongue was sticking out as he was coughing. Yeah. It's sad.
So that...
We don't have the money to get him to a vet yet, so that's why we haven't took him to one already.
Let's go back, because I'm totally lost now. McGowan had implied that the same military-industrial complex that escalated the Vietnam War, getting a major assist from Jim Morrison's father, Admiral George Stephen Morrison, had been responsible for a lot of this, a lot of this plot and plan. And according to the New York Times obituary, as far as Jim Morrison's father, quote, "This man commanded American naval forces in the Gulf of Tonkin when the destroyer Maddox engaged in 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats August the 2nd of 1964. A skirmish and confused reports of a second engagement 2 days later led President Lyndon B. Johnson to order airstrikes against North Vietnam and a request from Congress what became known as the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, allowing him to carry out further military operations without declaring war. See, Vietnam was a police action, I think was how they say. It was not officially a war. It was an abomination, was what it was.
Yeah, it was.
The Times fails to mention that the operation was under the aegis of something called O-Plan 34A, a series of covert operations targeting North Vietnam. These attacks were carried out by South Vietnamese mercenaries and special forces, with the United States in a supportive and advisory role. As Douglas Valentine points out in the Phoenix program, this role included placing Navy SEALs in the South Vietnamese units. As is always the case, the use of advisors here was little more than a pretext for putting American boots on the ground in the days before it was legal. Okay, dude just wrote all that. He accepts that as truth, and yet he's questioning some of the behind-the-scene things that these other ones are proposing.
Yes, that is exactly what he is doing. Which his whole fucking personality is getting in the way.
Well,
his own ego is getting in the way of this writing.
Yeah, I think so. And he says, according to McGowan, while Admiral Morrison was overseeing military operations in the Gulf of Tonkin, operations which either accidentally or purposefully drew us into war in Vietnam, his son was being used as a tool to crush the peace movement at home. Following the web from the United States Navy through Jim Morrison leads us to Frank Zappa. This connection was facilitated by Zappa's wife, Gail, who, like Jim Morrison, was the child of a naval officer. In fact, as Barry Miles revealed in Zappa, a biography, both Jim and Gail, quote, used to play together in the same naval kindergarten in Virginia where, according to Frank, Gail once hit Jim on the head with a hammer, end quote.
Dear God.
Well, maybe that's what happened. Frank Zappa's father arrived in the United States from his native Sicily in 1908. A graduate of the University of North Carolina, Mr. Zappa spent his life in the employ of the U.S. military establishment, as McGowan writes. Well, he either worked for it or he didn't.
Yeah.
That's verifiable. Okay, this eventually brought him to the West Coast, where the family lived for a time in Lancaster, California. McGowan points out that other past residents of Lancaster included Clarence White, who replaced Graham Parsons in The Birds, Dewey Bunnell of A Horse with No Name infamy, Don Van Vliet. McGowan also claims that the city of Lancaster is right alongside Edwards Air Force Base, although this isn't accurate. The base is 22 miles northeast of the city. Okay, that's, so there was a little hyperbole there.
Yeah.
And dude is just, I don't know, maybe he's binary code. It says that it does so happen that Area 51 is under the administration of Edwards Air Force Base.
Okay.
Yeah, so that all goes within there. Edwards Air Force Base. Okay.
Party.
Stay with me here. All right.
I'm trying.
In 1968, well, I know. In 1968, Frank and Gail Zappa were living at 2401 Laurel Canyon Boulevard in a home referred to as the Log Cabin. This structure began life as a roadhouse in the early 20th century and was later the home to silent movie cowboy Tom Mix and his horse Tony. The 2,000 square foot, 5-level house featured an 80-foot-long living room and a bowling alley in the basement. It was here, according to McGowan, that Frank hosted Perpetual Salon, attended by virtually every musician who passed through the canyon in the late to mid 60s. I have no clue what that Perpetual Salon thing was supposed to mean. I'm like, what? They sitting around getting salon? Their hair did. I don't know. McGowan portrays Zappa as, quote, a rigidly authoritarian control freak and a supporter of U.S. military actions in Southeast Asia, end quote, who used his role as producer, label head, and one of the most famous freaks in America to bring down the anti-war movement. Now, Frank Zappa, if you go back and listen to some of his stuff, now it's out there. And I honestly I never could get that much into his music. As somebody who has listened to the Fugs, the only thing memorable to me was the title of one of his songs, and I think I actually did listen to it, which was called Mommy, Why Does It Hurt When I Pee?
Dear God.
Well,
why? Why? I'm done. Good night. This is it.
You asked. Anyhow. So, it says, what are we to make of the fact that, quote, some have claimed, end quote, that J. Edgar Hoover frequented a brothel in the canyon. I don't know if that was with or without a skirt. Or that Frank Zappa's father once worked at the Edgewood Arsenal Chemical Warfare Facility where the U.S. military conducted MK-Ultra type experiments on human subjects.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
And we
love that.
He says... just give it a little longer. Give it a longer. So this is what dude is asking. And, okay, the author of this says that as far as the Doors, that they evolved from Ray Manzarek's bar band, Rick and the Ravens, and that Morrison was referred by his fellow UCLA film school students as the pudgy Navy brat until he moved out on the beach, stopped eating, and started writing songs while flying high on LSD.
What the fuck?
Okay, let's look at this logically.
What the fuck, dude? That's so...
Now, if he was that brilliant as far as him dropping out of college and stuff like that, and I don't know, maybe it was one of those Charles Manson type things. As far as, was he totally batshit crazy? Or was he, was there some intelligence and or possible genius involved? Now, I want to know how, because I'm not a druggie. I don't do well with the chemicals. I don't do well with the pot.
No, you're allergic to it.
I am. And so it's really hard for me to, as far as relate, there's no way I can possibly understand thoroughly somebody that has experienced hallucinogens. Yeah. Because I am so out there on a daily basis that taking something that would leave me with less control scares the hell out of me. And I think it's a healthy fear. So, but how creative can someone be while they're on LSD? How do they function? Can they sit there and write and do these things? I don't know. Maybe somebody out there that has experienced this, and trust me, we're not judging you. If you have had experiences with substances,
someone write on LSD.
That would be.
Like that.
I'm looking to learn. I'm not judging anybody.
No, people can definitely write. As a matter of fact, some artists, like, that's literally they either smoke a couple bowls of weed,
Right.
or just a couple joints, even one joint, or they decide to take a tab of acid or whatever. LSD is acid.
Yeah.
And then they literally just go right to the canvas or whatever medium that they use and go to town.
Okay.
That's usually what it does, and whatever comes to them, that's how you get some of these weird ass art pieces and such. But they're really cool.
Okay. I mean, I'm just questioning because I don't understand how that works and whether somebody would be able to function or not on those.
So think one of your paintings. You know how you do abstract paintings?
Yes.
And such like that one behind you?
Yes.
Think of that, but with color.
I've got
rather
some
than
that have
monotone
color.
gray. Like that painting in specific. Like that's... Some people have actually done that with these really, really bright colors. Almost neon, but not quite.
Right.
Super vibrant.
Interesting.
Super pigmented.
Interesting. But anyhow, dude here finally goes back and he's saying that McGowan and some of these conspiracy people that they've missed the point. And he says that Laurel Canyon, that scene at its heart, was built by the sons and daughters of the military-industrial complex, many of whom were relatively well-to-do and or lucky enough to circumvent the draft. Yeah, that luck. That took a lot of luck.
Yeah.
Who formed their own little community for a brief time in a very special place. It was oftentimes very dysfunctional. And it didn't last very long, but while it did, it was rather remarkable. Now, I think that dude is deluded.
No,
he was talking about these other people and the conspiracy theorists, and
I really did not like that.
Well,
I don't like his ego. Like, seriously, his own opinions got in the way too much. So
yeah, I agree with it. And
you agree with his writing, or
no,
you agree
no,
with
I
me
agree
on
with
that?
your opinion on that.
Okay.
And it's like, I don't know. It makes you wonder if his is not trying to throw people off of the trail.
No, I think he's just a bitter bastard
Well, that could be too.
and wants to take the fun out of everything.
Because I'm telling you, and it's, I do this thing as far as how society has changed by looking at music, and I've gone down that rabbit hole with you many times over the years.
Mm-hmm. You hate a lot of my music.
And I'm not hating on your music. It's not my musical style, taste, whatever.
Yeah.
There are things that and I'm like, look, you enjoy this person. I'm glad you enjoy this person. This person makes me want to barf. Certain things, that's just like I listen to people that you don't enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just...
Southern rock.
Happy. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? It's coming back. We're in the 70s again, and there is evidence of new versions of Southern rock coming back.
If you make me listen
as
to
evidenced
Southern rock,
by Kid Rock's latest release. If you haven't heard it, Go listen to it. It's kick-ass.
If you make me listen to Southern rock, I will make you listen to the old-timey
I haven't
country
forced
music.
you to listen. I grew up on that shit.
Exactly.
I grew up in it.
Guitar.
That's one of the reasons that I hate it, because I had no option. It was a form of psychological torture for me. So, yes, try to bring back my trauma. Thank you very much.
I didn't know that, so never mind. I'm not going to do that. I'll make you listen to Lana.
Anyhow, you can, and that's something that we could do as far as you can see how a society changed. And you have to wonder, was it that the music caused the change in society, or was it the change in society that affected the music?
It's usually the change in society changes
I don't know. And what we're seeing with these articles and the proposal that these things was a matter of social engineering, I can very easily see how that was. And I can, as far as especially rap music, how that changed drastically from when it first came out. And we can also see, as far as parts of society, how they changed with the message in some of these. And it's not just that was the one I'm picking on. But there are other ones too, even as far as pop music or alternative music, which is something I listen to a lot. I'm very eclectic musically. And that they're sort of closer to the millennium, things got darker. I mean, just the lyrics, the actual tone of the music, everything like that became heavy and dark. And the music today, a lot of it, it's like, oh my God, I can't even. And a lot of people can't even. This is why a lot of people are going back listening to oldies or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of the music that they come out with now is trash, but once in a while, which is very few and far in between, you'll find a gem.
Yeah. But even as far as the possibility that there were frequencies, not just the actual programming, which it is interesting that it's called programming, that comes from the TVs. And we went through that just a few cups back.
Television programs.
Yeah, that there is an actual frequency that goes along with the social engineering programs. It's kind of horrifying.
Yeah. Look at the news network.
Yeah.
Now that is social engineering.
All of it is. So, what you do? But Jim Morrison,
Regress.
It was interesting because there's lots of other articles and stuff about Jim Morrison. I've got one open here about his death. There was no autopsy. There was no funeral. There are people that think that he's not dead.
Like Elvis?
Possibly, and he and Marilyn Monroe almost living on an island someplace.
Oh no, Marilyn Monroe she died.
She was assassinated, right.
There was a funeral for her.
But, there was just a lot of really weird things that went along with his death. I will go ahead and put a link in the description box rather than going and adding on to that.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, because I have coleslaw to make is what it is.
Yeah, I have a hole in my shoe.
I'm sorry, you got a hole in your shoe.
It's in the sole of my foot. I am touching.
Does that mean your soul is leaking out?
My soul is leaving my body.
Anyhow, if you all have experiences with paranormal, supernatural encounters with UFOs, aliens, cryptids, conspiracy theories that I may not be aware of, because I thought I knew quite a few of them. I found out I don't know shit. Because there are it branches and branches and branches. And I'm not, this is not going to be just the conspiracy theory channel. We will go back into, this was just the rabbit hole that I went into for a minute.
Yeah.
So,
I bumped the camera.
Yes, you did. If you've got family, regional, local myths, legends, I went back and was watching the original Blair Witch Project today.
Mm-hmm.
That was so good.
I got 2 VHS tapes now.
That was so good. It was so innovative. We'll save that discussion for another day.
Ooh!
We will. And
how dare you block me from another conversation?
No, we're just saving it. We're saving it. Those of you who are...
This is why these need to be like 2 hours long.
No. This... God help, I forgot what I was going to say. Those of you in America here, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Those of you outside of America, you can join us too.
Do y'all have Thanksgiving overseas?
They have different things. Canada has a day that is similar to Thanksgiving. That's another time. I'm not sure some of the other countries out there exactly. If you want to put that down, whatever you all celebrate on that.
Yeah, what is your version of Thanksgiving?
Any day is a good day to give thanks.
Yes.
And to gather with family and have, feast and fellowship and these things.
Yes.
So you can
eat
share.
Lots of food.
It's like thank you
yourselves.
for sharing in a cup of coffee with us. Thank you for taking your time. Mm-hmm. Know that you're loved and appreciated. And we truly mean that when we say that.
We do.
That's not just random bullshit.
Yep.
So, we will see you all on the next cup. Extra dark roast for everyone for Thanksgiving. And cranberries. I love cranberries.
I'm indifferent.
I love the cranberries. So we'll see you on the next cup.
Don't forget to like, share, comment, and most of all, smack that subscribe button.
I don't know what he's going to do.
I wasn't doing anything. I was waiting for you to press the button. Bye.
Bye.
Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it?
We hope that everybody enjoyed this revisit and maybe learned something from it.
Yeah, it's educational.
Yeah, we are educational on shit from time to time. So it just...
I be the smooth brain gang, she be the wrinkly brain. Wrinkly brain gang.
Yes, I've got wrinkly lots of things at this point in life.
The smart people have the wrinkly brains.
They're supposed to. I think that
I got the smooth brain.
That has been dispelled. Who knows what the hell is going on these days? A lot of the stuff that we were taught.
Well, apparently the big brain.
Correctly, I don't know.
Apparently, the bigger the brain, the dumber the person is. Actually.
For real?
For real.
Okay. Well, that makes sense because you got to look at, Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, and I can see that. But anyhow.
Small brain.
And I don't know whether we did.
Brain.
We probably did our same spiel, didn't we? So we'll not do the same spiel again.
We good. Y'all have good.
Know that you're loved, and we'll see you on the next cup. Bye.